Potatoes are unhealthy, they are starchy and genetically modified. Beetroot is acidic to the human body, stay away from foods that grow under the ground. Egg bananas, they are starchy, they are genetically modified, acidic. Sweet corn is genetically modified, unnatural, acidic. Turmeric is genetically modified. Carrots are man-made, genetically modified, acidic. Peanuts, genetically modified, acidic. Genetically modified.
So, what is and isn't healthy? Health influencers have been debating over a lot of different things over the years, but one of those is GMO foods. Are they good or bad? Let's get into it. So to start us off, I have a little bit of a example, I guess you could say. What do you think is healthier? Also ignore the fact that these are a little uncomparable, but I have a can of tomato sauce and fresh corn out of our garden. Now, again, they're a little uncomparable, but forgive me, this was the only thing I really had on hand. What would you say is generally healthier? Most people would say, well, fresh corn, obviously, but this one is a GMO product. And if you'll notice, it's really small, but that's non-GMO verified. So, would you change your answer depending on that? Well, let's find out if that would be the right idea. GMO foods are generally described in 3 different ways. The FDA has a great example and a little video for an illustration that I will show you right now.
There's crossbreeding, which has been around since humans began to farm. Faster and more precise is genetic engineering, which allows scientists to copy a gene with a desired trait from one organism and put it into another. More recently, methods like genome editing give us more targeted ways to create new crop varieties. Feed your mind with more GMO information on FDA's website.
So while breeding may not be considered a GMO product if it's an offspring of that kind of selective breeding process, the other 2 are considered GMO products if those are used. So for genetic engineering, it's essentially just taking some DNA strand from some other kind of organism and implanting it into the DNA of that plant. And genome editing is going in and changing specific traits within certain genes themselves, which is more recent of a technology and is much more precise. And those are used to change the specific traits of different foods. So, what kind of foods do they use for this, and what are they used for? So here is the United States Food and Drug Administration's list of the current GMO. So here is the United States Food and Drug Administration's list of the current GMO crops in our agriculture. As you can see, there is not as many as the video would lead you to believe. So these GMO crops are normally modified to be heavily resistant to either a disease or some kind of herbicide. So while influencers like to say that a lot of foods are GMO products and are bad for your health, actually there's not that many. And generally speaking, these GMO foods are very safe for humans to consume. Some of them are used for animal consumption, obviously, stuff that we wouldn't normally be eating, but in a general case, they are very safe. There have been many case studies that have taken place, and I'll link stuff down in the description if you want to read into those more, but there are case studies that plants of specific types have both been effective for yield and are completely safe for humans to eat. But as for why you should care, well, I mean, besides getting to buy cheaper food because you're not always looking for the non-GMO labels and the all-naturals and all the things that people are trying to sell you, generally speaking, GMO foods help plants to survive because, like I said, they are mainly used for resistance to herbicides and diseases, and so crops that normally wouldn't be able to grow without them are able to completely thrive, and we can use them for harvests. It was found that in Europe, restrictions on many GMO foods were in place, and therefore they were unable to genetically modify and sell those foods to the public, which made food slightly more scarce. Although GMO foods, again, don't make up a large percentage of the overall foods, there are certain foods that it makes up a large percentage of, if that makes sense. I'll show a graphic here. So if the United States were to put these restrictions in place that were commonplace in Europe, at least 10 years ago or so, then we would have limited access to such crops such as corn that we use in a... Sorry about that, my camera decided it didn't want to do this video anymore, so I'll go ahead and start wrapping these things up. So, GMO foods are safe for people to eat. They are very useful to protect against herbicides and diseases that would otherwise kill crops if they were allowed. And this is important because if we let these restrictions pass, then we would have a more limited access to food than we already do have. So to close this video, I have a little interview from some people who went on a media show and gave their opinions on GMOs and shared the information they knew about. So, don't be like these people and stay educated.
Do you try to avoid GMOs in your diet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that?
Just the effects, I guess, on myself.
What does GMO stand for?
Man, putting me on the under the grill. Let's see. I don't even remember.
Do you try to avoid GMOs in your diet?
Absolutely,
Why?
because they're not good for you.
What is a GMO?
It's genetically I don't know, what is it?
What is a GMO?
It's a genetically modified organism.
And what's GMO spelled backwards?
OMG. Nice.